So this is kind of a continuation of our conversation that we were just having, maybe released a little bit later. So we were talking about kind of many things, but like the Platonic idea of the mind, a psychological theory of how we have like a sort of rational part, an appetitive part, and an honor-seeking part, and then talking about Rousseau and how to develop your character, how to grow as a person, and bringing a lot of ideas and images in there. I guess next I was, I think you had mentioned this, like the idea from Varela and Thompson in John Vervaeke's book about autopoesis, like how human beings are different than other living things and animals in that we all grow and develop, but we human beings are different because, and this is where our rationality can come in, the sort of what maybe we think is the best use of the rationality, which is to help us make ourselves. To we have ideas, images of how we could be a better person than who we currently are, and using our various tools and practices to try to become that person, to realize that personhood. So there's this. So here's a quote from page 131 of Vervaeke's and Mastro Pietro's book, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, about autopoesis, being self-making. Your structural functional organization. So that's like the Platonic psyche allows you to seek out the conditions of your development, conditions that will protect and promote your own self organization.
Hmm. Hmm. What comes up for me immediately on that is a mistrust that I know what's in my best interest.
Mm.
Um, I do think there again, again, sort of the golden mean, sort of you can fall off it one way or the other. Like you can also say, well, therefore, because I don't consciously know what is in my best interest, I just won't try or do anything, which is just as dumb. I think, if not worse, because then you're not doing anything.
Yeah, I think it's
And
worse.
I think that's a trap that I fall into in my life. That's something I'm trying to figure out how to get out of. But yeah, like you have to. I do fully believe that we do have to engage ourselves in the process. That we may not know where the process is leading, and this might end up back in like the I think it's the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna is the prince at the chariot. He's riding to war, and or no, I'm sorry, Arjuna is the prince, and Krishna is the charioteer, and he's talking to the prince, and he's developing this idea of like the abandonment of the fruits of your actions and the taking of the action as a devotion to something higher. Um, I think that's what solves that dilemma for me. Because I like what you're pointing to with that quote, that autopoiesis, that we make ourselves through our actions and our attention and what we develop over time. Um, and I think the thing that solves the problem there is that I'm responsible for the actions and the attention. I have to pay attention and I have to take the right action in the present moment. And that what the result of that is not up to me. And then it becomes sort of a 12-step higher power kind of a thing, or it becomes there was this there was this meme or graphic making its way around Facebook back when my wife and I first got together, and we reference it often of this little girl with a little teddy bear, and 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 she's standing there looking up at Jesus, and Jesus is like crouched there like talking to the little girl, and behind his back he's got an even bigger teddy bear, but he's trying to like take away her little teddy bear and hand her the bigger teddy bear. And she doesn't want to let go of the teddy bear because she wants to hold on to the one that she has. Um, and I think that's that's the challenging moment for us as Westerners, as us as inheritors of the Enlightenment, of like, oh, the triumphant man standing on the mountaintop, the world conqueror, the like, I'm going to enforce what I think to be the case upon the world, um, is problematic. And I'm sure that's not what Vervaeke is saying. I'm not trying to imply that that's what he's saying. This is my own problem with taking action in the way that he's talking about is, um, how do I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and being comfortable with that don't know mind, that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. There is no guarantee. There's no knowing ahead of time. There's no formula that's going to guarantee the right answer. I have to take aim and loose my arrow. And if it doesn't hit the mark, I have to stay present for that and use that as a moment of development and turn towards myself and become a stronger, develop stronger character, I guess, in the Aristotelian
Right.
way,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so yeah, I'm all for making myself, and I'm kind of ultimately grateful that the success of that is not entirely in my hands. Because God, that would be depressing if every time I failed, it was like, well, or every time, like if I had a goal and I aimed at it, and if I achieved the goal exactly as I envisioned it every time, and that meant I was a good person, and if it turned out being in any way other than what I envisioned, I was therefore a bad person, that would be a boring life. Like I would just be creating and fulfilling prophecies, and I would only develop meaning or purpose or success when I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it happened exactly the way I thought it was, and there was no novelty, there was no surprise, there was no enjoyment, there was nothing unexpected, there was no delight,
That would
you
be a
know?
meaningless life, wouldn't it?
I would think so.
I mean,
I
a
would think so.
100% predictable, successful life is just would just be meaningless. You'd just be ready to off yourself.
Yeah.
No? Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of that?
Yeah. And yet I feel like that's often what people think they're supposed to aim at, and they
Yeah.
feel bad when they don't achieve it, and we miss that. This reminds me of something to do with AI. One of my side projects is training AI, so I sort of do some research into that. And in AI, you one of the problems they have is these hallucinations. They make up facts, and the
Hmm.
models make up facts, and they act as if they're ready. They state their untrue facts very confidently. And one of the things I read was that if you want the AI to be creative, if you want it to generate novelty, you have to allow it to hallucinate. Because if you're not allowed to make those mistakes, you can't develop new things.
Mm,
And I think that's what we're talking about. I mean,
mm,
um, AI as metaphor, I guess, is how I'm using it here. But the
mm.
idea being, if we aren't willing to be surprised by the results of our actions, then we are in that infinitely predictable, or we've failed and have to feel bad about ourselves world where there is no meaning and we're super depressed. I can't imagine that anybody would want to live like that. Having lived that way for if you actually achieve that, you'd be super depressed and you wouldn't want to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
So,
think that's what people want. I think maybe there's a confusion there where I think we talked about this earlier a little bit, where they don't really want perfection. we or a certain narrow idea of perfection at least. They want fullness, wholeness, holiness. They want to flow with the with the cosmos as another living being living up to their potential, just like the other animals and plants, and not have this sort of rigid predictability, which I think would lead to nihilism and meaninglessness.
Yeah.
And that's how life can be an adventure, right? Where you don't, because an adventure by its nature does have a goal, but it doesn't have certainty.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And adventures are very fun to read about, but oftentimes not so much fun to actually do.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you realize, oh wow, that was amazing. But at the time, it can feel very disconcerting. It can be terrifying. It can be uncertain. It can be, oh my God, what am I doing here?
It has to have the challenge, right? And even the existential challenge and the night of despair, right? I mean, and then
Hmm.
that's maybe and then maybe your sense of triumph is proportional to how much you were challenged.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 That dark night of the soul thing is a fascinating concept because I think there's a couple of things that could be sort of lumped under that heading of like, we were talking earlier about alchemy and the mud and the lotus and the sort of yuckier parts of our personality that we have to sort of engage and develop to really develop that character. We can't ignore them. We have to acknowledge that they're there and work with them. And that can be a kind of a dark night of the soul, but then there's also, this is going to get real esoteric here. Um, if you take the concept of the divine or of the Godhead and acknowledge that in order for it to be the Godhead, to be God, it has to be everywhere. There can't be a space where it doesn't exist because then it's partial. It's not ultimate. If you're talking about a limited God, you're not talking about the ultimate God. You kind of linguistically you can't really crack that. That's solid, I think. However, I certainly do not have an experience every moment of my life of being one with some sort of infinite divine presence. So the question is, if there is an infinite divine presence, I am connected to it at all times, no matter what. I am aware of that to certain degrees, certain lesser or greater degrees at certain moments of my life. But the separation that I feel when I am not aware of it cannot be of God's doing. It cannot be something coming from the divine. It has to be something coming from me, from something that I'm generating, some way that I'm missing the mark, some way that I'm stuck in the cave, some way that I'm not stepping back from the shadows, to pull from the Platonic metaphors. So there's some sort of a block, very unconscious, some sort of a block in my psyche of that experience of the divine presence. And in order to have union with the divine, I imagine we have to experience that block fully. Like we have to, in the same way that, Tony Soprano would need to be aware of his mobster behavior and how bad that was in order to sort of contact the growth, the healing holy parts of himself that are represented by the ducks, like you were saying, like because God has to be everywhere all the time, we have to experience the thing that we think separates us from God
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
in order to understand that even in that God is there, or that on the other side of that experience of a lack of God, we find God. And I
Yeah.
think that ultimately is what the dark night of the soul is. And I don't want to claim to have had any real experience of that, but but I don't know. My practice is not deep enough. I am too cowardly. Any number of things, all of which is fine. I don't mean that as a beating myself up, more of an attempt to be honest with myself.
Mm,
Um, uh, that that sense of abandonment by the divine is something that, if the divine is truly divine, it has to be created by us. Our actions, our behavior, something
mm,
about us. And
mm,
so to experience that thing, whatever it is, that to have the experience consciously of, without trying to label it or think that we understand what it is ahead of time, to have that experience of separation is I think the desert, the dark night of the soul, the wandering in the wilderness, the admitting that you're lost and you don't know what you're doing. And you can maybe chew through that piece at a time or all at once, or everybody's probably got their own version of what that looks like on their own personal path towards, union with reunion with the Godhead. But yeah.
no, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned wandering in the wilderness. I thought of also Jesus's time in the desert, where wasn't he literally encountered by the devil, who used his calculating, worldly sort of sense? And, so that's not only suffering, but temptation. And in the Buddha's enlightenment, isn't there also a time when he was encountered by all the worldly temptations, the lust and the riches and things like that, and but he kept his concentration, and I don't know what the word is, dissolved or something, those temptations, but
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's more to it than what I'm remembering, but I know for sure that his sort of parallel with, because Christ, if I understand it correctly, his wandering in the desert was after being baptized by John and before he started his preaching, before he started bringing the good news. So it was sort of like he had this initiatory baptismal experience, wandered in the desert, was confronted with the devil, and came out the other side having shed the things that blocked him from his Christhood, to sort of stick with the Christian ontology there, as best as I can. And then with the Buddha, the moment, the sort of leading up to his enlightenment, he was attacked by Mara, the demon Mara, illusion. And all the daughters and the armies of Mara came and like threw weapons at him and tried to seduce him and all. And his response was to touch the earth
yeah,
and to say, I am here, which is interesting. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know if the Buddhist would word it as I am here, but there is this like presencing,
yeah.
and yet in Buddhism, there is no self. So there's sort of a conundrum there, a
Paradox
contradiction,
maybe. Yeah,
paradox. Yeah, that's
yeah,
the word. Thank you, thank you. There's a paradox there that is fun to play with if you don't take it too seriously. But
yeah.
but yeah, yeah, the temptation, the because I think if we are trying to confront something like that, it's easy to miss the mark, and it's easy to not stay on that path. Especially since we're never quite sure what the path is or where it's going or whether we're on it or not. The whole thing seems kind of like a big joke. In a positive way, not in a like, oh, it's just a big joke, it's bullshit, but like
Being able to
it,
take it lightly, maybe.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
being able to take it lightly, being able to laugh at it, just being like, well, I don't know it. I'm just doing the best I can, and I trust that the things that I don't see are being handled by things that care for me.
But don't you also sometimes you do have a sense of whether this is a little right or this is a little wrong? Don't you sometimes have that sense? Like, is that, I don't know if that's conscience or something, but we
Yeah.
do sometimes, often maybe have a sense, and maybe you can, as you develop, you develop more of a sense of the rightness or the wrongness of certain.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think my struggle in replying to that question is like, am I replying to it? This isn't on you, but like, where do I come from? Do I reply to it as
Yeah.
like me personally? I don't know. I the the desire for a compass, for a conscience, for a ability to know what is holy and what is not holy is has driven me most of my life. That I think is one of my underlying like I don't know if I'll ever crack that code or if I'm going about it the right way, but like if I could, I feel like that would answer the question of meaning for me. Um, versus people in general, I think in people's lives you often have a sense of rightness or wrongness, and the difficulty I think both for me and for the people is catching it is the way I see it, is like actually noticing the feeling when it presents itself and responding to it in the correct way. It becomes the
Yeah.
challenge, you
Yeah,
know.
that second part is, yeah, we have our defaults, we have our desires, and yeah, we have lots of sort of, I don't know, you could call them voices that are pulling us in different ways. And it's
Yeah.
hard to sort of slowly, with your eyes open, go into that.
Yeah, but there again we have the Rousseau, the idea from Rousseau of happiness as focusing on what you're doing,
Right. Yeah.
you know.
And maybe not
Um
worrying overly much about whether the rightness or wrongness.
yeah, yeah. I remember when I was sitting at the Zendo in New York, in upstate New York, quite a bit. Um I had this moment where we were doing work practice. We were like, so I was there for a longer retreat, 4 or 5 days of meditation. And most afternoons they'd have us like shoveling dirt in the garden or sweeping the floors or cleaning the bed. We do some sort of active service. And I was in the Zendo, and I was supposed to pick up all the cushions, the round cushions, the zafus and the zabutons, the sort of mats that the cushions go on. I was supposed to pick all those up and put them off to the side and sweep the floor or vacuum the floor, I forget, clean the floor in some way, the wooden, the hardwood floor, and then put them back. Lay them back out for people when they would come in for us to all sit together. And I was struggling to get the mats to line up because I would put down the square mats, the big ones that the cushions would go on. I put the mat down, and then I put the next one down, and I put the next one down, and then I would look, I'd stand at the end of the hall and I would see like, oh, they kind of curve off to the side, and then the one next to it would kind of curve, and they weren't the nice, neat lines that sort of create the safe sort of ritual structure. And I was like, I can't get this right. I can't get this right. And the guy that was supervising me came in and he said, like, you don't have to line them all up. You just have to find the line in the floor and line up the front of the cushion with, because it was a wooden floor, so it was these like, kind of like, I think like your floor, if I'm seeing it correctly, it's just these strips of wood,
Hmm.
one after the other, polished, but they're straight line. So you find the line that's already present, and you put the cushion up to it, and then you put the next cushion up to the same line, et cetera, et cetera. You don't care how each cushion lines up with each cushion. And I see that as like, you don't have to care how each moment of your life lines up with
Right.
each moment of your life. You look
Yeah.
for that line, which I think is that golden mean, that like the best you can
Right.
approach of the good, the true, the beautiful, and you align with that in the moment. And the more you align with that, the more you will find over time that your life coalesces around that movement towards the divine. And I think that I would mark that as akin to the character that you were talking about with Aristotle, as far as like the development of virtue over time. Um, it's that alignment with what is good and true and beautiful in the present moment as best as you can, again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I love
seems
that Zen
right.
story. I haven't told that in a long time, but I that was that moment when he showed me that and I lined them up and I saw them. It
Yeah.
was just like, oh, like it's so, it was one
Yeah.
of my big aha moments from the Zen days.
And that's great. I mean, and that seems to me, I don't know, right, that one of the biggest moments maybe was not during the actual formal meditation, but something you weren't expecting to be anything, and you were just practically trying to do a task and maybe narrowly focused. And then something came of that, you know.
Yeah, Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It wasn't my intense meditation practice, although you could say that the intense meditation
Yeah,
practice developed me to the point where I was able to have that moment or
yeah,
receive that moment because that was given to me by
yeah,
by this the senior student, the monastic there who was helping kind of guide us through the process.
yeah,
That was a gift from him. But yeah, it was engagement with the world that brought that moment of mini not moment of realization, but that brought that realization, that moment of insight for me was engagement with the world. It wasn't sitting on the cushion. That's
yeah.
yeah.
And what you said about, yeah, sort of looking at the pattern and not opaquely, or I don't know if that's the right word, narrowly at the individual parts as time goes on. That makes sense to me. And that sounds like yeah, because it can be ultimately stated to be like an attentional problem where, you're supposed to have a balance between looking at the big picture and looking at the narrow objects that make up that picture. And you are training and developing your attention and your sense to kind of know how zoomed in or zoomed out you should be and what are the important things. And some things are not important in themselves, but it's the pattern that is developing over time that is important for you to know.
Yeah.
We can go on to maybe almost the last things in the Aristotle if you want that sort of are very uh kind of helpful for maybe understanding the meaning crisis. Um so Aristotle places humans in this great chain of being, from inorganic matter all the way up to plants to animals to human beings. And the idea is that we are distinguished from animals, which are distinguished from plants, but we are distinguished by our rationality from other living beings. And the whole hierarchy helps us to understand ourselves as a part of all being and life, but also we are distinguished from it. So Aristotle stratified living beings according to their degree of information, their kind of structural functional organization. Plants are also self making, but they actualize little more than the ability to digest. Or you can say that, maybe plants are beautiful, complex kind of things or whatever, but they're not self making in the way that animals or humans are. And animals are self moving, but to live as a plant or a beast would be a failed life for a human being. I mean, to me,
Mm.
that's hard to argue with. Um, so yeah, I guess one point that Vervaeke tries to make is that when in the medieval world we had the Aristotelian worldview where science and your experience of life, your your cognition of the universe, of the cosmos, was all in alignment. And so there was this deep sense of knowing and conforming to the world. And when you lose that with the Newtonian sense and then different ideas of science, that can create a meaning crisis. So this is how maybe the meaning crisis can overall kind of can can be because of our worldview. And of course, we have many reactions to that: postmodernism, different psychologies and philosophies, different ways, hedonism, materialism. There's all sorts of, it seems like maybe all our general sort of responses are all like incomplete. And maybe that's something to do with the enlightenment of the narrowness of mind that we have. We want to find we want to find a certain cause and kind of go with that and go make a perfect solution from based on this narrow diagnosis. And but yeah, that was a lot, but I don't know if you, it's not like I'm trying, I think we should solve we think we can come up with like a solution, but I but I thought we might talk a little bit about that, how either personally or just uh, different ideas that we have of kind of how to approach the the crisis of meaning that we have, because we certainly live in a very complex world, right, compared to the Aristotelian medieval world, right, and how to kind of navigate that with grace, with some sophistication, with maybe still with cultivating the art of being ignorant and paying attention to each moment.
Yeah, I think for me, the yeah, we should I was saying we should call this podcast "Fixing the Meaning Crisis."
Yeah.
Like this episode. Um, yeah, no. But jokes aside, just to give a genuine answer, um, it seems to me that there's the the Aristotelian worldview, the participatory knowing that you lose in the Enlightenment, um, with Newton, or even with Galileo, taking the Earth out of the center, being no longer the
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
um, and so on and so forth, up to the technological revolution and all of that, the informational, the computers and whatnot. There's an alienation of the subjective.
Yeah.
There's an
Yeah.
exiling away of the subjective as if it's not important.
Completely.
Um, and here we go back to the Bible. The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and the subjectivity that the Enlightenment rejected has become the thing we need to attend to first before we can
Right.
build anything.
Yeah.
You know, and if we want to have any hope of a happy outcome for the meaning crisis, it has to be an inclusion of the subjective.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I almost feel like in a weird poetic kind of way, poetic, metaphorical, not literal, but as
Mm.
as a symbology or as a myth.
Mm.
Um, that's what the whole flat Earth thing is about. That's one of my personal theories, is it's a call from something in the universal soul to return to the knowing of the body. And the body knows
Yeah.
the earth is flat. The earth seems flat.
Yeah.
Everything above that is a conspiracy. Everything outside of my own experience is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
We can't trust authorities. We can't
Yeah.
trust experts anymore
Yeah.
because it's gotten so removed from
Yeah.
my lived experience.
Yeah.
But if we could include my subjective lived experience in all of that somehow, if I felt like there was room for me in it, then that would be a joyful participation in the knowledge that our society has generated.
Yeah.
Um, and the meaning of the self would, it's almost like the self and the meaning is the battery, and the social structure and the hierarchy and all the experts and this sort of Newtonian worldview becomes the thing that we power, which is getting me dangerously into Matrix territory.
Yeah. 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 You don't want it to be completely subjective. I mean, you do want to be careful about self-deception or
Mm.
being solipsistic. That's always
Mm.
but I think I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because again, like I think anytime you try and put things into words, you run that risk of
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because if we're here and I point that way,
Yeah.
then I'm right, and then suddenly I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You know? So truth becomes a direction rather than a statement of inherent within the concept.
Yeah.
You know, truth becomes a direction the concept points instead of something that is inherent, that is found in that concept.
Yeah.
And it's relative to where you stand, which brings in the subjective again. If you don't know where you are in relationship to the true, the good, and the beautiful, you don't know how to adjust. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying you do need the overall worldview, yeah, attuning your subjectivity. But yeah, you need the attention to the subjectivity too. And I think you're completely right in saying sort of if I can generalize what you're saying a little bit, it's kind of like the modern world and the scientific establishment and stuff is saying, which has some truth to it. I mean, like your perceptions don't matter to reality, it doesn't affect it. And that's kind of true. But at the same time, yeah, that's alienating. And yeah, it's narrowly true. But yeah, as you were saying with your battery analogy, it's not leading people to the truth. It's alienating them from the physical truth. And it's also prioritizing the physical universe, what is 10,000 and millions of light years away from like your experience. And if you're alienated, are you becoming a better person? Are you being closer to the beautiful and the good? I don't think so.
Hmm. Hmm. I
And
agree.
what about the the stereotypical scientist that's sort of telling people, that's sort of disdaining people rather than trying to enlighten them and trying to have a dialogue, but maybe they don't want to have a dialogue. Maybe they'd rather be right. They'd rather be superior.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's the I already know what it is, so I don't have to look at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And society is stratified because of that, right? That's a different type of inequality. And in addition to the other types of inequality we have, it's this, yeah, knowledge inequality and this sort of, yeah, certain kind of alienating scientific stance is exacerbating that. And that to
It,
me would lead to, yeah, less social cohesion and more a sense of meaninglessness, where the scientist, as I'm saying it, is superior and egotistical, and the flat earther is solipsistically feeling superior and also egotistical. They're not helping each other, and how are they supposed to eventually live in the same land?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it ultimately comes down to compassion, really. Like if you the ability to understand another person and meet them where they're at in a good way. But I think there's I think it's in the I Ching, the Chinese book of divination,
Mm.
that there's a concept of a mountain. I think it's a mountain with a lake. I forget the actual trigrams that go into it, but the story, the meaning that I pulled from it is like if you have a hierarchical structure, it is important that the top of the structure takes care of the bottom of the structure. So whether we're talking, you know, billionaires versus working class versus, poverty level people, or we're talking knowledge-based scientists versus, blue collar workers, flat earthers, whatever, like whatever it is, whether we're talking intellect versus somatic in the body, the emotions and then the body and then the instincts, like
Oh, nice. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that.
everything. Thank you. Everything that sees itself as higher has to take care of and engage with the lower for the system as a whole to be healthy. And whenever the higher tries to alienate itself from the lower, or even they don't even have to be higher and lower. It could be they could be side by side, different ways of knowing, different ways of being in the world.
Mm.
Everything needs to be able to communicate and share information, I
Mm.
think. And the
Mm.
moment that one side feels like it doesn't have to care about making sure the other side understands the worldview or feels taken care of, or that it's the needs of one are superseding the needs of the other, you create a split that then, if you are in a hierarchy and you are further up, you're dependent on whatever's below you, and you
Yeah,
need to make sure
yeah.
that they're happy. I mean, or you end up with a revolution, which is painful, or you end up with the things supporting you falling out from underneath you
Yeah.
and you toppling from your high tower because you're not,
Yeah.
it's like some of the more conspiracy based views, which I won't weigh into whether they're right or wrong, but the idea of like the super wealthy are going to build bunkers and I don't know, I got switched on my screen here. Hang on. There we go. They're going to build bunkers and they're going to like retreat to these island hideaways and the rest of us are going to like kill each other in post-apocalyptic, Mad Max warfare
Yeah.
and somehow these rich people are going to be okay. Like they're not going to be okay. Like it's just it it creates this split where there isn't one. And you can't you can't run away from that. The solution is not to run away from that. The solution is to turn towards it. And whether we're talking the super wealthy and the down to the poorest people, or we're talking our own conscious mind and the suffering parts in our unconscious that we ignore,
Mm.
our inner lepers that need washing,
Mm.
we have to take care of them. We have to go
Mm.
in and attend to them because they support where we are at. And
Mm.
if we don't support them, then the whole thing collapses and you can't stay wealthy by selling things to a people who are tearing themselves apart, even if you have managed to isolate yourself from them,
Yeah.
you know? So it becomes again that participatory knowing, whether it's with other people or it's with parts of ourselves. I think it starts with parts of ourselves. I think the more we what's the word? The more we I have a specific word, I can't think of it, but the more
Mm.
we reunite with the parts of ourselves that we alienated, I think we develop a character in the Aristotelian sense. We develop something, a knowing about ourselves and what it means to be human that then helps us meet other people with where they're struggling to be human and creates
Mm.
this wave of virtue that as I become more virtuous, my presence is able to help other people become more virtuous. And it can grow in that way, but it all is kind of dependent on confrontation with discomfort, uh,
Yeah.
making the right choice as the Tony Soprano of my own life,
Yeah.
attending to the soft feelings that I have for the ducks and its family, as opposed to and holding that up in the face of the violence that I perpetrate,
Yeah.
and being able to see which one do I want and make the hard choice of giving up the power that comes from the violence that leaves me dead inside,
Mm.
or giving up the money that I don't need for my third mansion in order to invest in something that will support the poor people, not because I'm generous and kind, even purely out of the selfishness of if I am part of a system, I have to take care of that system for myself to be taken care of. And anything other than that is disaster for me. I often think of teachings that true morality is just like a science or a selfishness on a level above three-dimensional space and one-dimensional time. You see what is in your personal selfish best interests over a generation, over a century.
Yeah.
Um, and you're like, oh shit, like if I want things to be good for me, like I have to make them good for other people.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
only way that goodness is actually cultivated.
Yeah.
That's what morality is to me, is like, how do I create the best world? I think I'm treading into Jordan Peterson territory.
Mm.
So, credit to him for that, if that's where that came from.
Mm.
Um, he's a complicated fellow that we don't need to get into right now, but
Mhm.
I did want to, acknowledge, I
Mm.
believe he has said such things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, and he seems interested in the sort of, yeah, personal morality, but then also what you brought it into, which is the sort of societal level and political level. And I was thinking as you were talking about, like you mentioned, how it's kind of in people's best interest, even if they're just being sort of selfish, but not narrowly selfish if they're thinking of the big picture. And I was thinking of, and Plato talks about the tyrant, and I like to use like Stalin or some, you can think of some other tyrant, and it's like I think the story is that when Stalin died, he wasn't found for like 6 hours or something like that. Like, you know, covered in like his waste and something like that. And yeah, that's just sort of like an image of this is like the most one of the most powerful men in the world. This is how he
Mm,
died, alone, unattended, people afraid to go check on him, else they might get executed for like disturbing him, you
mm,
know. And
yeah.
if you think being a tyrant leads to happiness, please look at how actual tyrants are, how paranoid, how unloved, how hated, and how much they're having to swivel their heads constantly for what enemies might be lurking, and their unconscious, I would think, would constantly be alerting them to real and chimeric uh, enemies because they're always generating new ones.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because there's my anyway, my read on that, I don't want to say that this is true, but my read on it, that is it goes back to what we were talking about with the chocolate cake, of like they are enacting power, the need for power to that degree can only come from a misunderstanding of power as the means of procuring safety or
Yeah.
something. Power
Yeah.
as the means of
Yeah.
procuring something, some basic need. Safety is
Yeah.
probably one of the most basic needs, but some
Yeah.
sort of basic need, and
Survival.
survival, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that you actually need the power to protect you from is not this person or that person. It's something in yourself that you are covering over with the need for power or the need for wealth or the
Mm.
need for fame. Um, some sort of a pain or an ache. And here we get back into trauma, the field of trauma again, but it's power for the tyrant is the toxic mimic of security.
Mm.
But the reason they don't feel secure is because of something that's in their unconscious. It's something in their psyche. It's some
Mm.
pain that they feel
Mm.
that they are trying to heal through the acquirement and enactment of power over others.
Mm.
But the enemy's on the inside,
Mm.
and so they never are satisfied. If they were satisfied with power, they wouldn't keep trying to grow it. The
Yeah.
fact that they keep trying to grow it proves it's some sort of an addiction. It's some
Yeah.
sort of a projected need onto power.
Yeah.
And so therefore they'll never be happy. They'll never be satisfied, and they need more and more power, and they end up shitting themselves in bed unattended for 6 hours because everyone's so afraid of him. He's achieved everything he wanted, and it hasn't made him any happier or safer.
Yeah.
Um, and so what was driving him? If power was meant to provide something and it didn't provide him with it, what was driving it? What did he actually want?
Mm.
Who knows? I'm not going to try and psychoanalyze Stalin or Hitler or anybody else and try and be like, oh, well, when they were a kid,
Yeah.
this and this, like you can't. I don't think even for ourselves, often we can do that in our own little ways. Like if
Mm.
it's the chocolate cake, for example, rather than, the the ruling of the Soviet Union with an iron fist. If you're just eating the chocolate cake, and when you shouldn't be doing that, but it's become a substitute for something like we might not ever find out that, oh, well, I'm eating the cake because I'm sad because when I was 5 years old, my parents didn't pick me up from school. They were busy. I thought they forgot about me. I had this abandonment wound that still gets triggered. Like, or you might know that even and still be eating the cake. The
Yeah.
the the problem is sitting through the pain and
Mm.
being conscious, oh, I'm seeking cake slash wealth slash power slash fame
Yeah.
because of this ache in my soul.
Yeah.
And yet the ache itself is the solution. If we can sit with the ache of the pain without mislabeling it, then we can come to some kind of a holy solution.
Mm.
But if we substitute something as the solution for that ache, and oftentimes I think that happens because when we're young, we develop a story that this
Yeah.
thing hurts me, and I am incapable of doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And so therefore I have to find a different way of dealing with this pain, of making it go away instead of attending to it. But pain always is a call for attention.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's
Physical or any
yeah,
other
if you put
kind.
your hand on something hot, it hurts so that you notice and you take your hand
Yeah.
off. And same thing with pains of the soul. Like my soul hurts because something has happened that maybe I believe something I shouldn't believe, or I've labeled
Mm.
something incorrectly,
Hmm.
and it's causing, I'm stubbing my toe, so to speak, on this cake
Hmm.
every night. I'm running into the same problem again and again because the thing that is driving it is unconscious. And we
Mm.
might never get to the story of what caused that, but we can understand our behavior, understand that it's not helping, understand that we're using it to run from something, and turning to face whatever that something is, without having the story about, oh well, when I was 5 years old this and this happened.
Yeah.
Because you can hold on to that story and never face the pain
That's
that
right.
drives it.
That's
But
right.
if you can face that pain, then you no longer have to seek power. You no longer have to be a tyrant. But sometimes that's impossible to do because, as with Tony Soprano, you're doubling down on the tyrant behavior and you end up in a dark place.
Yeah. Yeah. It depends on your intention,
Yeah.
I would think. And yeah, your intention with the story could be not trying to solve the problem, but using the problem in some way.
Yeah. It becomes an identity. It becomes a victim identity of like, oh, well, this bad thing happened to me and therefore
I'm justified
I'm
in this and this
justified.
and this.
Yep. Yep. And oftentimes there's this the Cartman victim triangle is this psychological model of victim, rescuer, and persecutor. And oftentimes you will move from one to the other along the triangle,
Huh.
but all three of them you end up, and rescuer that's meant in like the codependent way of like being caretaking other people and
Yeah.
put it, just I to justify my existence, I have to go in and save everybody. You could see that as the intense version of the like Christian missionary. I have to go and
Mm.
save the world, and never mind if I'm making everybody miserable. Never mind if I'm slaughtering the natives because I'm saving their souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore you're acting as a rescuer, but you're actually persecuting, and that's coming from some sense of victimhood that you can't turn and face.
Yeah.
And I think Stalin, same thing. I think, I think this a lot of things come from our inability to sit with discomfort,
Yeah.
and our need to label it too quickly as a means of control, which is again an enlightenment value. You label it as a means of control, and you think you know what it is, and you have this objective. Well, this is always this thing, and therefore I don't have to investigate. When really that's not scientific at all. You have to
Yeah.
start with a hypothesis and you have to test it.
That's right. And you have
Yeah,
to be open to, yeah, you don't do the bad science where like you throw out any results that you don't like.
yeah, exactly. You have to
Or
find
like
that
if
that truth. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, 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 that I think that's very important, sitting with the pain. And I might have brought up this quote before, but it's a little quote from Pascal,
Hmm.
who Blaise Pascal, the sort of contemporary of Descartes, who was very, very different from Descartes. And I don't know much about him, but what little I know, I really like about him. So also genius, also, math. He designed one of the first computers when he was like a teenager, and then he built it later on. Like so, super genius, also like Descartes, but
Wow.
also very, very different person. Like he had some sort of encounter with the divine one night, and he had this idea of like the But anyway, yeah, he was just much more kind of, I don't know, spiritual, mystical, things like that. But that's a long preface just to get to this little quote I wanted to throw out, which is it's or it's sort of a summary that's attributed to him of things that he said, so sort of an indirect quote. But it's something like most of man's problems come from simply not being able to sit in a room alone for half an hour.
Mm, nice. Nice. Yeah. I think that's, if not completely true, then still nevertheless the exact a very true path. Meaning, like maybe there are other problems, but if you find that you can't sit alone in a room for half an hour, you need to try,
Yeah.
and that brings me right back to Zen. I mean, that's what Zen training is. You sit alone. I mean, you might be with people, but you're not interacting. You sit and you just sit. That's all you do. Like that's the instruction. And that is in Zen, that is actualizing the mind of the enlightenment. That is being the Buddha. And trying to figure out how the fuck that works is kind of part of that particular game. I don't know that I have answers or any that I feel willing to give at this moment. I don't understand. I haven't trained a lot in Zen, but the idea of just sitting as a solution is not has been explored to a great degree and found effective in many cultures. So I don't think we can write off Pascal in that sense. I think he's definitely right, and I think because what happens when you meditate is a lot of the stuff you've been avoiding, you can't avoid. It's there. It's there. And you either go along with it or you find a way to observe it and slightly stand apart in that way we were talking before,
Mm.
of like actually not dissociating from it, but also not
Yeah.
being taken over by it. I know for me in meditation that I struggle with thoughts. I'm often taken over by the thoughts and I follow them and I follow
Me
them and I'm
too.
like, oh shit, I'm
All the
completely
time.
lost. But I also think that that's actually a good thing. Like that's what I'm supposed to be doing in meditation, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I am choosing a set amount of time to have the experience of, was I able to notice when my thoughts overtook me? That's it. To my mind, that's a large part of what meditation is. I mean, maybe there's a bunch of other stuff, but
Mm.
that in and of itself, I think could probably work. In that, like, I think a lot of people think of meditation as like, if I am having thoughts, I'm failing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always like want to shake people when I can't meditate. I just think all the time. It's like, well, the whole
That's
point of
why you need
meditating,
it, right?
yeah, you're well, not even that. The whole point of meditation is it's not to not think. It's to practice stopping thinking. It's to practice noticing and detaching from thought. So the more you notice that you're thinking, the more you're thinking when you're meditating, the better effect the meditation is going to have on you, so long as you remember that when you notice that you step away. Or if you notice that you've been thinking for the past 20 minutes of your 30 minutes, you're like, wow, I really get caught up in my thought process where I am alienated from both my surroundings and my intention. And why is that? What is going on there? And not so much to think about why that is, but to investigate in the moment of like, oh,
Mm.
what is leading to this? And
Mm.
it completely dissolves your identity as one who can just decide to do a thing and do a thing. Because if you can't sit there for 5 minutes and focus on your breath, who are you? And who are you
Yeah.
to think that you're engaging your willpower in your life?
Yeah.
And if you're not engaging your willpower in your life because you clearly can't engage it for 5 minutes to sit and focus on your breath, who's in charge of your life? What are you that is engaging the willpower or not engaging the willpower? What is your relationship to willpower and to do taking action in your life? And it just it produces so many questions. But to cut
Yeah.
all of that off by saying like, well, I can't meditate because I'm just always thinking. It's like you did a ritual. You're casting a spell. You said, "Help me wake up to my mind." You sat down. Your mind presented itself, and your moment of accountability is, do you stand by your intention of being present and investigating what is happening here? Do you notice that you have been caught by the mind, and do you take that backward step to create some space from it? Um, do you practice that without need for results, without knowing ahead of time what the result is going to be? But you engage in that practice of no longer being caught up in the thoughts, so that in your life, when you're caught up in the thoughts, you're more likely to recognize it then and take a step
Yeah.
back and integrate
Right.
more with whatever it is that's going on around, whatever process you're engaged in. You learn to widen your focus,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's why meditation is a training, right? Or
Hmm.
how meditation is a training. That was
Yeah.
interesting. You said it's like you're casting a spell, and what did you say? You're looking at your mind as an object, or what was it that you said? You're engaging in a ritual. You're casting a spell,
Yeah.
and you're sort of inviting your mind to show itself to you, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. That just kind of popped out. But I can go back and try and unpack it. Like magic and spells, the idea of that is you speak an intent and the world conforms to your intent.
Right.
And the basic level of that could be like, oh, I intended to move my arm, and this physical matter that makes up my arm moved. Like
Yeah.
that's a tiny little example of,
Yeah.
you can extrapolate that out. But when you're meditating, you're you state the intent, the meditation instructions that you receive are your intent. So whatever it is that you're sitting down to do, and that could be focusing on the breath, that could be chanting a particular mantra, that could be scanning the body for, the sensation, the bodily sensation, scanning through that. It could
Mm.
be just sitting, like in Zen, you're just supposed to sit there.
Mm.
Anything that you're doing, you're sitting down with this intention,
Mm.
and what you are trying to do with that intention is refine the self, refine the sense of who you are, discover the truth, reach enlightenment. I mean, any of those things, but you are asking to be given a chance to understand yourself, and what is causing so many problems in your life. You're trying to resolve your karma, I guess, from that viewpoint.
Mm.
And when you sit down, you are presented with all of the stuff that normally happens in your life, but you don't notice because you're too busy focused on your life. You
Right.
create a space where all of those things can come up and present themselves. And it's your moment to practice. I am receiving this information, not this information is taking me over. So again, it's
Mm.
that ruler, and so are you the benevolent servant leader that is receiving the communications from his people, or are you the people storming the palace and wrecking the whole thing?
Right.
Um, Benevolent leader, not the tyrant. Very different.
Yeah.
You don't want to the tyrant, then you're suppressing everything and you don't feel it, and then you have the revolution come up and something
Yeah.
does take over, and that's the neurotic upheaval. That's the lashing out. That's the emotional issues. That's any of those things. But you're just sort of practicing that, and you're refining what it means to be yourself. And you're directly experiencing all of the things that sway your aim. I guess to draw it back to that arrow thing, you're no longer you're taking that moment to notice the gravity, to notice the wind, to notice where the target is, to note, like you're noticing all of these things, just with the moment, just with the intention of like conforming with them, knowing them, being present with them,
Yeah.
so that so that you build the ability to do so. Um, and then post meditation, when you're off the cushion, your nervous system is more integrated,
Hmm.
and therefore you have a greater character, a greater virtue. You're engaging more in life in a positive way, and that has a positive effect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds very good.
yeah.
Yeah, and I like this returning to the metaphor of the archer that seems so it seems very pregnant with meaning and just
Mhm.
there's many things you can get out of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, do you want to we can kind of finish with the Aristotle and maybe wrap things up. You you mentioned the conformity theory of knowledge, how, simple example when you know, you Vervaeke brings up how like yeah our idea of knowing post enlightenment is so narrow. It's about propositions and about certainty, trying to achieve certainty. It's a very just intellectual kind of thing. It's not fully embodied, widely rational and everything. But like in the Bible, it says like Adam came to know his wife Eve, and they're talking about sex, but that we're so confused by that because for us not that is not knowledge, and that shows we're alienated from our history, from our bodies, from our wider world. And so this conformity theory of knowledge, we conform to what we know, we take its shape. To know something is to participate in its form, as opposed to descriptive knowing, where I'm standing apart from the object and I'm generating propositions about it. So, this theory of knowing is also a theory of being. This is on page 136 of Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And this theory of knowing and being satisfies the desire to be in contact with reality, to be connected to the world in an intimate way. And to
Hmm.
me, that seems like, yeah, that seems a way of awakening from this world, this sort of Hobbesian Descartes Cartesian world where knowing is reduced to calculation that is done somewhere inside of my brain, which is isolated from everything, and I don't even know if my body is real, and so on. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, yeah, the alienation from the body is, I think, really one of the greater sins of Western civilization.
yeah,
It's just there's when we think of the body as an animal, or as a factory of instincts,
mm,
drives,
mm,
or mechanical pieces that we can cut out and replace or just be removed from
yeah,
it it it, all of that is to completely miss the body, I think. And I've done a lot of training with this through this guy Reggie Ray, who I have to give that credit to. He's a spiritual teacher in the Tibetan tradition and has had some problematic issues, that I won't get into. It's not the place for it. But I can't go into this kind of discussion without some gratitude towards what I got from him, problematic or not. Um, the return of the somatic field to my experience has been massive. I met him in 2010, I think, and had been sitting Zen for a few years, and it completely changed my practice. My Zen practice. Because I was doing all of it up here.
Yeah.
And yet, like, I'm more intimately connected with my body at every moment of the day than I am with my phone. One of the things I'm trying to train myself to do is to treat my body like it's a phone, treat my body like it has an app,
Mm,
and be like, well, I'll check my phone in a minute, but like, what's going on in my nervous system? What am I feeling in
mm,
my body? Is there tightness? And
mm,
even is there tightness, or where is it open? Like, that's such
mm,
a doorway. Like, that's not the
mm,
answer, but you
mm,
look for that kind of a thing. And it feels to me as if the more I do that, the more my sense of self expands to include my entire nervous system,
mm,
and the information that comes to me on what would normally have been less conscious levels
mm,
becomes more conscious. There was psychologist Wilhelm Reich, another student of Freud's, who split off and got into some pretty wacky stuff, and is sort of very more counterculture now. But he had some really good ideas, I think, and all of that is to say, he had a quote that the body is the manifestation of the unconscious.
mm,
And for him, he meant, I haven't read a lot of his work. I've studied about him, but I haven't actually read
mm,
a lot of his work. But I believe what he meant was, like, if you look at someone's physicality and where they carry their tension, that is the tension of the body is a reflection of the psychological tension of the energetics of the organism.
yeah.
And to my mind, the more I have gotten in touch with the sensation of my body as something, I don't want to say secondary, but something additional, alternative, equal to but separate from my intellect.
Mm,
So being able to hold both of those in my awareness at the same time, the
mm,
more meaning my life is generated, and the more power and energy to do the things that are important to me I've been able to generate. And I can't generate a lot of that. I still struggle with that a lot. I still have a lot of tension in my system. And I don't want to say I just need to have no tension, but there's something about the awareness of the body, and I don't mean that as in my awareness of the body, but the
mm,
awareness that the body generates that I can partake in.
mm,
I can plug those wires into the wires that normally just run through my intellect, and
mm,
I can become the system that holds both of them.
mm,
And that becomes a much more participatory, knowing it generates much more meaning um, in my life than being separated does.
mm,
But the problem is the body and the unconscious, the tension that it holds has been put in place to avoid something, usually something painful,
mm.
not necessarily, but something that is contradictory to the story I tell myself about who I am and how I have to be in the world.
Yeah, there you
So
go. Yeah.
it could be pain. It could be I'm way smarter than I give myself credit for. It could be I can be much more loving and compassionate, but I'm afraid of connecting because this one girl broke my heart this one time when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so now I can't open. And because there's this unconscious fear of being open in that way that I was that one time I got hurt. I have to compensate for that. And in all of my relationships since then, I've been alienated from my partners, which is me speaking from my own experience there.
Mm,
Um, wasn't quite high school. I know we share some histories of high school, so slightly post high school, but
mm.
when young love goes bad, it can leave scars that are very hard to heal,
Yeah.
and yet they live as tension in the body. And yet, if we notice moments where our current relationship approaches those areas, and we're able to be, because we're so tuned into the presence of the body, we're able to catch the tension before we enact the behavior that compensates for that pain, and we can stay with that. that moment of pain, instead of trying to compensate for it, we can that's the route to wholeness, because we're no longer engaging in that distracting behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
completely agree.
yeah,
Yeah, the body and the mind should inform each other and, not really be separate. And
yeah.
yeah, we can get, I think, individually and societally, yeah, it can get into so many problems when you're starting to, like a lot of the theme of this podcast is alienating certain parts because yeah, you want a certain answer to pop out the other side of the pseudo journey you're going on.
Hmm.
You don't want to really see what there is to see.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the nice edge there is to balance with like trusting that if you see what's really there, it will ultimately serve your best interests and the
Yeah.
best interests of society and all of that. But to be really careful that you don't trust your interpretation of what's there, because you could so easily pre-interpret something before the truth of it has presented itself, and then you're off on another dog's leg false trail kind of a thing. So it's both trust and not trust, because you can say, oh, you have to trust, and then you'll be like, oh, well, I trusted it and it didn't work, so it's a lie. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you trusted it too soon. You
Yeah.
you you have to trust in the unknown more than you trust in the known, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And that's more pain, that's harder.
Hmm.
And that may be what we're led away from in our enlightenment thinking, this a narrow view of science rather than a broader view, or however you want to say it, that we're looking for certainty. We're looking for an easy answer. We're looking for clarity when we're not ready for clarity. We haven't done the work and haven't gathered the variables to develop that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think we're also at that point where there's the danger of sort of the bad side of postmodernism, of there is no truth, there is no
Yeah.
clarity, I
Yeah.
can't reach it, I can never reach it, and therefore
Exactly. Yeah.
everything is valid and everything is equal. And
Right. Yeah.
it's complicated because there's a paradox there of that's true, everything is valid and everybody has their own unique path and all of that, but it doesn't mean, or what's also true is that there is a truth, there is a clarity, there is something that can be found or that can be developed. And to deny that possibility exists is to be satisfied just wandering in the desert forever and lying to yourself that
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
no promised land, if you wanted to
Yeah.
take that metaphor from, the Israelites from the Bible, from the Old Testament with Moses and whatnot. Um, it's just to be like, well, I can never find truth. There is no such thing as truth. That's not, there's no road to satisfaction there. The
Yeah.
the closest you can get is hedonism, and that has short legs. It
Yeah.
doesn't take you very far,
Or
you
you
know.
can go into crime, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I mean, or you get into, might as well just impose my will on others, or, yeah, which is like hedonism, but much more, like instead of I'm going to go with sensual pleasure, I'm going to go with like will to dominate or something like that. And yeah. And then
Yeah.
Dostoevsky's, quote, something like, without God, everything is possible in like the bad way, that everything is
Mm,
possible.
nice. I
Everything,
hadn't heard that one. Yeah.
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 Yeah, yeah. My understanding of postmodernism is the good side of it is it's a playful, when it is good, it's a playful critique of the certainties, the arrogance, the narrowness of and whatever weaknesses that modernism has. But then,
Mm,
yeah, exactly. It doesn't provide an answer. And when you treat it as if it's an answer rather than like a playful critique, yeah, you're getting into bad territory there.
that's nice. Yeah, I like that as a critique. Yeah, because it's pointing to the thing that modernism or Enlightenment values lacks,
Yeah.
which is the subjectivity, but
Yeah.
it at the same time negates what modernism is good at, which is the holding of a truth, the sort of the I don't want to say modernism is good at that, but modernism is based on that as a value, put it that way,
mm, mm,
of the search for truth. And
mm.
I think you can have a subjective search for truth that sort of answers both questions, which is again that golden mean we've been talking about this whole
Yeah.
time. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that too. So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about today? I feel like we had a pretty good dialogos here. I feel like I focused and yeah, I think we touched on a lot of good things and brought up good themes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been this has been a great conversation. I'm very happy for it. I hope people stick with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, I hope it's
Let us
fun.
know in the comments if you got to the end.
Yeah, and I say that like in a like I hope for their sake we have managed to be entertaining enough or and enlightening enough or educational enough to hold their attention.
Mm,
I'm trying to think. You had said if I had anything else, there was something about conformity in the Aristotelian sense, something about participatory knowing
mm,
that I think I still wanted to kind of touch on because there's a sense of tending to the body, to the somatic sense can do it. Tending to the felt sense of relationship of another person as not a concept, but as a living being on
yeah.
a felt sense, not on an intellectual sense, but on a felt
Yeah.
sense can do it. And that could be, excuse me, even another living person, such as a tree. That's a living being. You can see it's living. You can watch it move in
Mm,
response to the sunlight. You can watch over time. I've got a planter box right behind my computer here, and I can watch as the plants will kind of follow the sun, or I can see how they're growing to try and put themselves in front of the sun to try and get as much like there's some
mm,
sort of a desire there, and I can
mm,
participate that in that by having my attention on them and not labeling them plant
mm,
and saying I know that.
mm.
But I think there's also like a question of in ritual practices, particularly pre-Christian or I'm thinking the Greeks with some of their esoteric practices, but some sort of a participation with the divine, some sort of participation with a god or I mean I guess they didn't have the god back then, but participation with something sacred, which isn't a plant. It's not something we can see, but it's also not just a concept. Um, that's one of the things I struggle with Plato is I often feel like he can easily be misinterpreted to being focused on having the perfect concept. And if you can just
Yeah.
have, the form, the perfect form, but if you don't take that offshoot, if you don't go that way, and you assume that Plato was talking about something genuine and what's the word? Transfiguring,
Mm,
um, that there's like there's some level that we can participate in that same kind of conformity, that same kind of being with. I've been hesitant this whole time to bring in the concept of non-dual because I think that
mm,
concept gets misused a lot, but I think that's
mm.
what it's talking about of like there is a thing and there is me, and we are both separate and not separate at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lived experience of that in kind of a mystical sense as opposed to just
Mm,
being a conceptual thing. But I
yeah.
think we can do that with ideas, like the divine or with freedom or with, you know, any kind
Goodness.
of goodness. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, and to relate to that in a way that is non-conceptual, that is felt in the body, that is, in that sense. I mean, there's this guy, Ian McGilchrist. I know he's made the podcast circuit quite a bit.
I like him.
Uh,
Yeah.
I've listened to his book. I have not read it, Master and His Emissary, his first
Mm,
book. But he talks about, the left brain and the right brain, and the left brain being, to really dumb it down as hard as I can,
Mm,
the left brain being concepts, fractures, splinters off the whole, little things,
mm,
and the right brain being everything all at once, the holistic, the whole thing.
mm,
And there are other left brain and right brain interpretations, and all that could be up for
hmm,
grabs. But I bring him up because I feel like he points really well to the difference between the conceptual mind that can break a piece out of the whole and look at it, which is a good thing to be able to do.
mm,
But the problem becomes when that tool overtakes the conscious awareness of the whole. And so it isn't at the service of the whole. And
yeah,
I feel like what you're talking about with conformity with Aristotle is pointing towards that sense of the whole and of the self and the joining between the two. So you have that while still maintaining the conceptual mind of like this is a thing I am knowing. There is an information flowing from this thing to me.
yeah,
It feels like that would be the result of having the two sides balanced. I don't know. I might be reaching there, but it hints to me that participatory way of knowing hints to me of the right relationship between the conceptual mind and the whole mind.
yeah, yeah. There might be something to that. Yeah.
We've been at this a long time. I'm a little tired.
No, that's good. But yeah, yeah, yeah. We can maybe yeah, I think participatory knowing, yeah, it's a very useful kind of thing, and and being and knowing not being separate
Mm,
seems a way of, yeah, you when you're conceptualizing something, knowing that, yeah, it's not having this idea that it's completely separate from you and that
mhm.
you're not completely separate from it, and you're not sort of making contact with it over a void with your intellect or something like that. We get into the Cartesian kind of, yeah, kind of alienation maybe. And yeah, I think you're touching on something that's important for our conceptualization, for our understanding. Yeah, I won't say conceptualization, for our standing under this and trying to take it in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like that trying to connect with it over a void. I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
that's if you want to define the meaning crisis in a few words, that might just be it. We're trying to connect with things over a void instead of being with them. And if we
yeah.
can figure out how to be with them, then meaning can be generated from that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I kind of get that idea from Vervaeke, and that makes so much sense to me from Vervaeke about Descartes. And that makes so much sense to me that that's why we, that leads to a lot of the scientists looking down on the flat earther, or, you know, your intellect uh, being separate from the body, just so many of our schisms in ourselves and our lives and our society. Yeah, because yeah, we're sort of we view things as being essentially separate, even though when we think about it, there's absurdity there because how are we understanding it at all if we're not making contact with it in some way? And then
Right.
yeah, there's that over the void, but it's like, yeah, there's something in that image that resonates with me too, of
Hmm.
how that's why that's some a lot of the reason we're so unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I have one more thing to say, and then maybe we call this. Or if you have
Okay.
more things to say, please do. I'm not trying to cut you off, but just
No.
for
Yeah, you're
for
good.
my side of things.
Yeah.
Um, what you're talking about there brings to mind for me that so there's this guy Dan Siegel. He's a neurobiologist guy. His system is interpersonal neurobiology,
Mm,
IPNB.
mm,
And I have his like flagship program. I bought it a few years ago, and I worked through like the first chapter of it Loved it. I've read his book, My Insight. I listened to a bunch of interviews. Love it. Want to make my way through the rest of it. Have not had the chance or the time or taken the time to do it.
Mm,
But in that first section, he talks about systems theory and complex systems and defines the mind itself as a complex system.
mm,
And he talks about any complex system will develop itself through the process of differentiation. So it will take one thing and define, oh, okay, this is and this is here. So it will
mm,
differentiate
mm,
and then it will link. So it
mm,
will create a relationship between these things that have been differentiated.
mm,
And I feel like the meaning crisis, if I put on my rosiest of glasses, the meaning crisis is peak differentiation. Everything has been broken out
mm,
into these individual things,
mm,
and we keep trying to differentiate more to
mm,
solve the problems.
mm,
Oh, if we can just this break this down, but the
mhm.
problem that is happening is we are not linking. The pieces aren't being brought back into together into anything holistic.
Yeah.
And if we could find a way to develop our ability to link, which within the context of our conversation here has been finding those parts of us that are buried, bringing them up and like bringing them more in to relation with the whole of ourselves. That's one way of defining linkage, or of being aware of the holistic sense of the world around us while also being aware of what we're thinking. That's
Mm,
another way of linking things. But
mm,
any practices that bring about linkage in that way would give rise to a whole new structure, um, that could potentially be like it would turn the meaning crisis into an initiatory crisis where it was the pain
very
that
good.
became the thing that developed the greater
Yeah.
that pushed us to develop the greater thing. But we have to make the right decision of how to confront that. And I think we've
Right.
pointed to how to make that right decision quite a lot in this whole conversation.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that was sort of a moving thought that I'm not gonna go much longer, but do you think that thing is in one word religion, the thing that links all the
I mean,
differentiated parts in the correct way?
that's fascinating because I was going to say I don't know. Um, because to say that religion will be the thing that links it is dangerous because religion means of what religion means to a lot of people.
Mm,
And I certainly don't mean dogmatic, moralistic, any of those things. But
yeah.
I had to laugh because I'm remembering my Joseph Campbell, and it was I think it's with the Bill Moyers interview, like his big PBS program that he's
Yeah.
sort of most known for. I think that's where he points out the etymology of religion is religare, and ligare being ligament, being the thing that connects. And so religion being re-ligamenting, reconnecting. And so yes, I have to say, yes, I think that would be religion in the ultimate sense, religion as the thing that connects us with the divine. Same thing with yoga. Yoga originally, if I understand it correctly, comes from yoke. So the thing that
Huh.
connects the cart to the ox, so the ox can pull the cart. To
Go
my mind,
forward.
to my mind, all of this is like reality, time, the world, creation is moving forward all the time. Change is happening all the time. And we're either a part of that change or we're not. And it's that change that I want my consciousness to be relinked to.
Yeah.
And I think rather than continuing to try to pin down specific things, and specific answers, and if we just take this apart, we'll take this apart,
Yeah.
conceptualizing, breaking it down further and further. If we
Yeah.
look to just abandon all that for a little bit, and again, in that, don't fall off that side of the horse, get back towards linking and wholeness and religion in the sense that, we're discussing right now, then yeah, I would say I think that would be the solution, but it has to be genuine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
People need to find a way to feel reunited with the divine on that level of purpose and meaning in the body and not just as an idea. And if
Yeah.
anybody can guide can bring about that kind of transformation in society, I think that's what we need. But again, I think the best we can do is work towards it and leave the result in God's hands because it's not for us to dictate to the divine that it should connect with us,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, if I'm thinking, yeah, the answer is religion, but it's not like, okay, now I'm gonna make up a system and try to enact that system. It's sort of a process that will happen, and yeah, with thousands, millions, billions of people trying to rework things and trying to do their little part.
Yeah. And again, in systems theory, when you have enough pieces of the system that are engaged in a healthy way, the system itself will generate new behavior.
Wow.
So if enough of us, theoretically, if enough of us do become virtuous in our own lives, civilization as a whole may become virtuous all of a sudden of its own. Something new may manifest that we did not intend, we did not envision, we did not try and will upon the world, but is a gift in response to the work that we have proven ourselves worthy of doing. You
Yeah.
know.
I think that I I look forward to that happening, and yeah.
May it be so. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, good conversation. And until next time, maybe next week.
Yeah, I think so. My wife and I have our anniversary coming up, but I think that's in 2 weeks from now. So I will
Congratulations.
be in touch. Thanks. five
Okay.
years, man. Yeah. It's hard
Yeah.
to believe. But yeah, I think next week. I think next week.
Okay.
And this is
Okay.
definitely the right place to end.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. All
Yeah.
right. Well, until then.